Hello, I'm Katty Kay in Washington. Rob Watson is in London for us. Joe Biden thinks he is the best person to beat Donald Trump in 2020. That's why he's running, and that will be his pitch. He announced his candidacy early this morning in a video.
Biden has a long career in Democratic politics. He's already been US Vice President and a US Senator, and a candidate for the White House twice. Biden joins a very crowded field. There are now 20 Democrats running to unseat Trump, and his video suggested that doing that is now all that matters. It wasn't about policy, it was about Trump, and specifically Trump's response to Charlottesville.
It was there on August of 2017 we saw Klansmen and white supremacists and neo-Nazis come out in the open. Their crazed faces, illuminated by torches, veins bulging and bearing the fangs of racism, chanting the same anti-Semitic bile heard across Europe in the 30s. And they were met by a courageous group of Americans, and a violent clash ensued. And a brave young woman lost her life. And that's when we heard the words of the President of the United States that stunned the world and shocked the conscience of this nation. He said there were, quote, some very fine people on both sides. Very fine people on both sides? With those words, the President of the United States assigned a moral equivalence between those spreading hate and those with the courage to stand against it. And in that moment, I knew the threat to this nation was unlike any I had ever seen in my lifetime.
President Trump reportedly sees Biden as a serious adversary, and he marked the announcement with his own response. Welcome to the race, Sleepy Joe. I only hope you have the intelligence, long in doubt, to wage a successful primary campaign. It will be nasty. You will be dealing with people who truly have some very sick and demented ideas. But if you make it, I will see you at the starting gate.
Yeah, you always know that you've got Donald Trump's attention when he gives you a nickname. So, who is Joe Biden? Here's a look back at his long career. Joe Biden became a politician in 1972. To put that in context, in 1972, America was still at war with Vietnam.
I, Richard Milhous Nixon.
And Richard Nixon was the country's president. Biden has known more than his share of tragedy. He lost his first wife and infant daughter in a car crash.
Joe Biden's my name.
In his many years in politics, he became a champion of working people, an advocate for gun control.
I refused to give up. We refused to give up. It took me 7 years to get the first ban put in place.
Nothing but the truth to help.
More controversially, Biden led the Anita Hill hearings and was noticeably tough on a woman accusing a Supreme Court nominee of sexual harassment.
The next president of the United States, Joe Biden.
In 1988, he made his first run for the presidency.
Thank you.
20 years later, he tried and failed again. His consolation prize was 8 years as vice president to Barack Obama. The two are still friends. Today, Joe Biden is running again. He is 76 years old. That makes him a year younger than Bernie Sanders and just a little older than Donald Trump. Even if 70 is the new 60, that still makes a bunch of old, white men the three frontrunners for the next president of the United States. For the moment, at least. Joining me now is Neera Tanden. She's formerly a top aide on Hillary Clinton's first presidential campaign. She's now the president of the Center for American Progress. Thanks very much for coming in. Make America great again. It's kind of what Joe Biden is saying, right?
I think what he's actually trying to say and is saying is that Donald Trump's presidency is out of step with what the core values of America is. He really talked about the kind of division, the racism that we've seen from the Trump presidency, the acceptance of white nationalism. And I think it's actually a very unifying message within the Democratic Party, who, you know, more than in any previous moment, is very much focused on defeating the incumbent Republican president.
Would he be a good candidate to take on Donald Trump? Do you think he can beat him?
Well, I think this is one of the strengths that Biden has had. We have sort of a reinforcing factor in the Democratic Party. People are so focused on beating Donald Trump. They look at national polls where Joe Biden is beating Donald Trump, and then he gets more and more support from Democrats. So, he's had 3 months, over the last couple of months, he's seen a fair number of hard stories against him, some of which you showed. And I think the truth is he's still doing pretty well. He does well in matchups against Donald Trump, and he's still leading the pack. So I think that's really the central question. He acknowledges, and his campaign is built around, I am a strong challenger against Trump. You can see me on the debate stage against him. I am prepared for the job, and I can do a better job than he does, or he has done. And I think that's animating a lot of the support for him so far.
Neera, it's Rob in London. Hi. I just wanted to ask a sort of a naive question, really, and that is, do you think he would actually make a good president, or a better president than the other rivals for the Democratic nomination?
Well, I think this is going to be the question for the next several months in the debates and elsewhere, which is what kind of campaign can you put together, and also what kind of president you'll be. But I do think most Democrats, in fact, probably 95% of Democrats, think any one of these candidates would be better than Donald Trump. So in the argument of who would be the best president, people can imagine the Vice President Biden as president, because they've seen him in so many settings you see a president in, from the White House and in front of Congress and elsewhere. So I think he sort of fits the shoes very quickly.
Right, Neera, have I got time for one more quick question? Which is, if it is, it's can he win the nomination?
I absolutely think in many ways right now he's the front runner for the nomination. He has to answer tough questions. This is a very large field. There are a lot of candidates, a lot of younger candidates who may represent a new generation. And so I think he has to articulate the case of why he would be the best nominee. He has had historic strength with white working class voters actually of all colors. And I think that's going to be a really important issue for him.
Okay, Neera Tanden, thanks very much for coming in to join us. That was great. Let's bring in former advisor to President George W. Bush, Ron Christie, who's in Washington for us. Ron, great to see you. Okay, so it seemed to me, looking at that video that Joe Biden released this morning, that his pitch is aimed firmly at independent voters who may have voted for Donald Trump in the past election, but who aren't particularly happy with the president's character, and it's going directly at the issue of values and character.
Good afternoon to you, Katie. Great to see you as well. And I think that analysis is precisely right. You see so many of the other Democrats in the fields, Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, playing on race, or Pete Buttigieg, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, playing on the fact that he's gay. Joe Biden is trying to appeal to a sense of patriotism. Those who may have voted for Donald Trump, as you noted, but aren't feeling very satisfied with the direction that the president has taken the country. And so it will be very interesting to see, as we've noted, that he might be the front runner right now, but how long will he be able to hold on and maintain this position before his other candidates start attacking him for his past record?
How nervous do you reckon they are in the White House about him?
Not very, to be perfectly honest with you. If you take the name Donald Trump out of the equation and you look at the American economy, you look at the unemployment rate, you look at how people of color are doing in this country, there's a lot certainly for Donald Trump to run on. But when you put the name Donald Trump in, of course, everything that we've seen for the last couple of years, that changes the dynamic quite dramatically.
Ron, it's Rob here. I mean, I was wondering, I know it's not up to you to help the other side, as it were, but if you had to advise a Democrat on how to beat Donald Trump, what would you advise them to do?
Good evening, Rob. Good to see you again as well. What would I advise them? I'd say it's pretty simple. You would say that in these very challenging times, do we need a president who has been not indicted, certainly in the Mueller report, but he's been indicted by many in the court of public opinion. Is this the sort of individual that we need to stand and represent the United States? And can we restore a sense of dignity and honor to the office that many Republicans, Democrats, and independents feel that Donald Trump has taken away from it? So if I were a Democrat, I would move more away from the identity politics and try to find a way to unify the country, which so many of us here in America are looking to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what Joe Biden is trying to do, isn't it, in this campaign video? And I'm interested in that you say that they are not particularly worried about Biden in the White House? Because I would have thought that Biden, of all of the 20 Democrats who are running, Ron, represents a fairly formidable bid against Donald Trump. I mean, he is one of the more plausible candidates for defeating Donald Trump.
One of the more plausible, absolutely. Will he be well-financed? Without question. But Joe Biden comes with his own baggage. He comes for being very strict against Anita Hill back in the Clarence Thomas nomination hearings. He's one who boasted for voting for Justice Scalia when he was up for the Supreme Court. And if you look at his rollout, Caddy, yes, was it going for independence? But I want to know what the candidate's for. I don't want to hear him talking about Trump and Charlottesville. I want to hear what's your vision. This is the first time he got to introduce himself in this cycle to Americans of why I'm running, why it's important that you need Joe Biden. And I thought it was a bit more negative of a tone than he could have otherwise taken.
Okay, Ron Christie, thanks very much for coming on. That interesting that hear what the White House might be thinking about Joe Biden. We saw the president today. He sent out that tweet. He also retweeted a couple of other criticisms. That tends to be what he does when he thinks that somebody represents a challenge to him. The question for Joe Biden is going to be convincing Democratic primary voters over the course of the next year that he is the person that can win 3 key states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Those are the 3 states that Hillary Clinton lost in 2016. That is why Donald Trump is in the White House and not Hillary Clinton. He needs to persuade them that he is the person that can do that.
Yes, Katia, I mean, I was thinking that really, you know, that Mr. Biden, that video suggested that he wants to make this about values. I mean, quite often elections are about, I'm going to make you better off, I can lead America in the world, but about values, the idea that Donald Trump threatens the very idea of America. One wonders whether that's a winning formula.
Yeah, maybe at the moment it is, yeah.
The Sri Lankan government.
You know the saying, third time's the charm. No doubt Joe Biden and his backers are hoping that is the case here, since he has already run for president twice. First time, he pulled out within the first 4 months. So let's get specific on Biden's previous launches with CNN politics reporter and editor-at-large Chris Cillizza. Okay, so we know him as this senator from Delaware. He first ran back in '88. What happened?
Okay, so he actually never makes it to 1988 in his first bid, Brooke, because he drops out in '87 following a plagiarism scandal. Now, just a little bit of context. He's not the front runner in 1987, but in 1987, Joe Biden's only been in the Senate for 15 years. He's seen as kind of an up-and-comer. He's considered someone who could be the nominee, but he gives a speech that's very similar to a speech that a British Labour politician had given named Neil Kinnock, and it leads to his demise. Let's play a little bit of sound that gets at those similarities first.
And I started thinking as I was coming over here, why is it that Joe Biden is the first in his family ever to go to a university?
Why am I the first Kinnock in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university?
Now, it's not just that. There's more similarities. Kinnock cites his wife, who was the first person to get to university. Biden cites his wife, who was the first person in her family to go to college. So there's a lot there. There was also more, that there were other potential plagiarism problems with Joe Biden's speeches. He said he had just thought of it. He didn't realize he was plagiarizing it. And to this day, he has fought it. But it did lead, as you rightly note, to him getting out of the race. Let's play that sound. This is from 1987.
I do it with incredible reluctance, and it makes me angry. I'm angry with myself for having been put myself in the position of having to make this choice. And I am no less frustrated with the environment of presidential politics that makes it so difficult to let the American people measure the whole Joe Biden and not just misstatements that I have made.
Just, Brooke, very quickly, in the everything new is old, Joe Biden decrying how nasty negative politics are. Oh, boy. Imagine if it was today. Anyway, so that was a 1988 presidential bid.
What about 2008?
Okay, 2008, different animal. He's been in the Senate, obviously, a very long time. This was seen in some ways as a career capper. Never seen as all that serious a candidate, and his showing proved it, as we show here. So he only ran in one race. This was the Iowa Democratic Caucus. It kicks off the nomination. Here he is down at 1%. Okay, obviously 1, 2, 3 are the ones who really mattered in that race in the long run. Biden drops out after this, but in that race, he did catch Barack Obama's eye, becomes the nominee and picks him as VP. Let's play the sound of Biden dropping out of, that he hopes doesn't come again, dropping out of the 2008 race. Let's play that.
As I got up and Jill told me the results, I feel no regret. Not one single solitary ounce of regret.
Now, I guarantee you, Brooke, when he dropped out, I remember this, when he drops out in 08, there's no way he thinks, maybe in 12 years I'll run for president again, right? That was seen as the end. Then Obama picks him for VP, and then Hillary loses. I mean, it's a series of events that have drawn us here. But one thing Donald Trump is right about when he attacks Joe Biden in presidential races, the 88 race ended by a plagiarism scandal, the 2008 race, he's never really relevant and drops out after the first vote. He's never really shown the quality of candidate that we expected him to be in either of those races. So there are questions as he begins this third time to try to get that mantle.
Well, we'll be asking the questions. Chris Cillizza, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Speaking of the former vice president, a powerful union is expected to endorse him, especially notable since this group chose not to endorse either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton in 2016. I'm talking about the International Association of Firefighters. It is not wavering one bit for 2020. You can see the signs that were ready for Biden when he spoke to the union last month, and now officials say sometime next week they will make their support of the former vice president official. In 2008, he explained to an audience of IAFF members why he feels and he owes a lot to first responders and firefighters in this country.
But I owe the firefighters of my state, I owe them my two grown sons. When my wife and daughter were killed in an automobile accident, it was a firefighter using the jaws of life that got my two sons out in the hospital, to the hospital, in time to save them. I owe you and the firefighters of my state, literally, I owe you my life. The fact of the matter is, when I was diagnosed with a ruptured aneurysm in the middle of a snowstorm, my local fire company put me in an ambulance and got me 2 hours in the snow, 2.5 hours in the snowstorm to Walter Reed to get me to the right doctor.
Harold Schaitberger is the president of the 316,000-member union. Harold, thank you so much for being with me.
Brooke, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I read a quote of yours just from a couple years ago that you said your group will walk through a wall for Joe Biden. So beyond clearly his support for legislation backing collective bargaining and benefits for first responders, can you just give me one big reason why you guys will be endorsing him?
Well, first of all, Brooke, let me make it clear that now that the former vice president has announced his candidacy this morning, our executive board, who's been in discussions on this for a number of months, and it's, as you mentioned, also invited him to address our 900 leadership team at our legislative conference. We will be meeting tonight at 5 o'clock to take our formal action concerning his candidacy. And the results of that formal action we will be prepared to announce early next week. But to your question, we're pretty straightforward. You have our back, we have yours. You stand with us, we'll stand with you. And Joe Biden has had the interest of firefighters and, quite frankly, all workers, all middle-class workers, has had their backs and been supporting us throughout almost 4 decades of support. And so as we consider putting our reputation and the goodwill of the incredible members, firefighters that do such incredible work on the front lines every day, we're going to be prepared likely tonight to formally support someone who has, without any question, been supporting our efforts for years.
Well, to your point about having their backs, it sounds like in an interview I read of yours from after the election in 2016, where you felt like the Democratic Party had left you and your members behind when, went all in on, winning over minorities and college-educated whites and sort of losing the focus on the traditional blue-collar base. And do you think that do you feel like Joe Biden has the right message? I'm sure you've watched his rollout video this morning, city of Charlottesville, and what happened there a couple summers ago, playing a central theme, on race and on injustices. I mean, is that what you want to see to win you and your members back?
Well, Brooke, first of all, Joe Biden has the voice and the ability to connect with workers, and particularly those workers, including my members, and particularly within those key battleground states through the Midwest, to be able to speak to them and their concerns. And quite frankly, in the last election, so many of our members felt that the nominee of the Democratic Party was not speaking to them and was not connected to them and did not fully recognize the work they do. You know, we talk about workers, people that go to work and have to go home every day to wash their hands or take a shower. And Joe Biden has the voice, the connection, to be able to truly be that kitchen table, if you will, Joe, and connect with their concerns and their aspirations and what they believe their opportunities should be in this great country.
Sure, sure. On the flip side, I don't know how often you read the president's tweets, but he is calling Joe Biden Sleepy Joe. Harold, he would be 78 at his inauguration if he were to win. Is that a concern for you?
Well, it's not a concern for me. What I'm focused on is a Joe Biden that's going to bring decency and civility back into the political discourse. Someone who knows how to bring people together and to reunite this country like it needs. He also has the ability to be able to operate on the international stage. And
but what about, Harold, just quickly, if I may, you know, I hear you talk a lot about how your group is not a monolith, right? You got more liberals, conservatives, independents. And so in 2016, reportedly, your group's own polling found 50% of you all supported Trump. Do you see, last quick question, do you see that support for Trump wavering going into 2020?
I'm not going to focus on the president right now. What I will tell you is that I think
but it sounds like half of your union is,
overwhelming majority of our members will be supporting Joe Biden, and that will, if you will, come home to the candidate that will be speaking directly to them.
Okay. Coming home. Good luck with the vote tonight. Harold Schaitberger, appreciate your voice and the message. Good luck, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke.